And I'm realizing, how am I going to take care of these kids by myself? I don't have a job and I have nothing. And I said, okay, well, you're the only one who can do it. And they are your priority and you love them so much. And I looked inside myself to find something to do, some way to drive myself.
Hi, I'm Ebony, and I believe that stories change lives and everyone has a story worth telling. Sometimes, unfortunately, we let our self-doubt get in the way of us writing our stories and sharing our stories. So that's why I created Motivation to Write as a source of motivation and inspiration to help writers like you and me share our stories with the world. So I talk to the experts ranging from entrepreneurs to marketers to authors to therapists to psychologists who share their knowledge and their advice to help writers like you and me step into our full potential. Sheila Logan is the founder of Yes Women's Network, a networking community of female professionals supporting and lifting each other. As a single mother raising 5 children, she hit rock bottom and decided to make a significant shift in her career. She started a business with a clear intention to help other single mothers who needed to create change in their lives. Sheila is dedicated to inspiring and helping women start, build, or grow a business. I am here with Sheila Logan, and I'm very excited to talk to Sheila because you are the founder of Lock and Load Marketing, the Messy Backend podcast, and Yes, Women's Network.
Yep, that's right.
Now, I know you have a really compelling story, and I'm wondering if you can give us a little bit of your background as far as how you entered the world of entrepreneurship.
Sure. So, about the early 2011, I was working, and we have this pandemic now, but back then it was H1N1. If you remember when that first came out, like people were so sick and it was like a big thing. And my 2 youngest, who were 8 and 10, I believe at the time, both had H1N1. I had a letter from the doctor, 104 fevers. They were, sick. When your kids just lay on the couch and don't move for like days, it's sad and it's hard to watch. And so I couldn't go to work. So I let my boss know. I said, look, I can't go to work, but I will just work from home. And he said, well, that's not acceptable. When will you be in? I know. And I was like, well, let me think. Shall I take my kids over to your house so your wife and your kids can watch my, what do you want me to do? Right. You know what I mean? And so, of course, he was actually golfing in Florida at the time. So I stayed home because my family is my priority, always is. There's a lot of times when there's a struggle between the two, but there's no question, hands down, my family will always come first. Mm-hmm. So I stayed home. At the time, I was doing transaction coordination and marketing for 65 real estate agents. And I was driving to their office with my own laptop computer, sitting at a conference table. I didn't even have an office. Then driving home with my very own computer. So I worked at home. None of the agents, because it was Christmas time especially, even knew that I didn't go in that day or that week. I actually missed an entire week because all of their work got done. And so while I was at home working, I'm like thinking, man, I can do this from anywhere. Like I could do, as long as I have an internet connection, I can do this from anywhere. So I started getting online and looking and seeing, what options are there for working at home, and can I do this from home? And I found the virtual assistant world. And I started, doing some study on that. I started, buying some training, learning all of the things. And after the week that I was home, I went in and he called me into his office and he said, I just want you to know that I understand family comes first because my family comes first too. But next time you're going to need to get somebody to watch those kids. You're going to have to come in. And I'm like, okay, I said, I quit. Yeah. I quit. And I went home and I went to the newspaper. This is before I really understood how to do things. I went in the newspaper to the classifieds and I looked for real estate agents who were looking for assistants because I had a license. I was a licensed assistant and called 3 offices. On the 3rd call, I picked up an office with 8 agents and I started my business. And so it just happened that fast. But what I quickly realized after that first year was all I have done is built myself a job working at home, making the same pay I was working before. And now I have to pay my own expenses. And so that's when I started really studying, like, what does it take to really have your own business? How much do you charge? How do you figure that out? How do you figure out how many hours you're going to work? How do you figure out what services to offer? And I spent the next hour just diving so deep into how to build an online business. And I started picking up more and more clients as I was going. And then other virtual assistants started coming to me saying, hey, can you tell me how you're doing what you're doing? And so I had it in my mind, like a lot of people do. I'm like, okay, well, I'll be a coach for a minute. Okay. For about a half a minute, I was like, I'm not a coach. Like, you need to have training to be a coach. This is, not just anybody can go be a coach. Yeah. So what I did is I started a virtual assistant network, and I had the virtual assistants fill out applications to be a member. And then if somebody was looking for a virtual assistant, they could come and let me know what they were looking for. And then I made some matches. And so then I was helping the other virtual assistants that way. But as time went on, what I realized, a couple things. Number one, I was asked to create a social media training for real estate agents for Fannie Mae, which is like the number one mortgage. They're like, if you create this free training, we'll send it out to all of our 500 million, whatever agents, and then you can upsell them. Like, we can't sell things to them, but we can give it to them. We'll give them your thing to your page. And that was only like a year and a half into my business. And that was my $1 million moment, because if even, 100 of them bought it for $10, that's $1,000. And if you're sending it to, I think they said there was like 5 million agents they were sending it to. And so I'm like, it scared the life out of me because I wasn't prepared. I didn't know what that would do to my server. I didn't know if it'd crash my website. I didn't know if I could handle all of the business if it came in. I didn't really completely understand email marketing. And so I said no. Mm-hmm. And looking back, I think I made the right decision, because at the time I just know I couldn't have handled it. But what I've came to realize is I had built myself into this place where there's no exit strategy. Everything that I built was around me. I had to be the center of everything. I would never be able to retire. I'd never be able to sell my business. I could never grow because everybody wanted to work with me, not with people I started trying to hire. And then I started working with a mentor, and I said, I'm so tired of sitting behind a computer. I love teaching and training, because I was still teaching and training virtual assistants. I wasn't making any money doing it, but I was still training. I loved that so much. And after 2 months of counseling and mentoring with my amazing mentor, he says to me, let's just simplify it. What do you want to do? What do you want to do? I said, you know what? I've been a single mom. At the time, I'd been like 25 years, something like that. I said, I've been a single mom for 25 years. I was married on and off, but didn't have any support with the children. And I said, I just want to help those single moms and those military wives who are sitting at home and they're on the couch. School's coming up, all those, fees. And they're sitting there going, crap, now what? I said, I want to help those people. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, but I can't make money helping those people, and I've got to keep food on the table and a roof over my head, my kids' heads. And so we discussed it a little bit more. And he says, well, what's the opposite of, oh, crap, now what? And I says, okay, well, I set the example of, if I lost my keys, I'm like, crap, now what? I went and found my keys. What's the first thing out of your mouth? Yes. Yes, I found my keys. He goes, you need to start a woman's network, and you need to call it Yes Women's Network. And I'm like, oh, no, because I had helped a gal in Canada for 2 years build a woman's network in Canada. And I knew what it would take. I knew the work. And I said, I can't. But over time, I came to realize that that's what I really needed to do. So I started building the women's network, and I was building my email marketing platform. And I contacted the founder of that email platform. We were friends on Facebook. I don't know how that happened. And I was chatting with him. I says, I love marketing. Marketing is my favorite thing to do. And I understand it. And I love your platform, but I can't find anybody who understands marketing and understands the platform. I'm like, I know thousands of virtual assistants around the world, and I can't find one who has both of those skills. And I said, I'm just going to start a business, and I'm going to hire single moms and military wives who want to stay at home, who don't want to start a business because they're not crazy like us entrepreneurs. And I'm going to teach them how to do marketing and email marketing. And I'm going to hire them to do this, and they can do it whenever they want to do it. And that would serve both my purposes. Right. Uh-huh. And he says, well, if you build it, I'll train them for free. And then he retired. I was like, that was helpful. But I mean, he was really great and it was awesome. But that's how Lock and Load got started, is that I was just joking with him. I was like, I'm going to start a market. I'm going to call it Lock and Load Marketing. I'm going to lock and load these women with all the tools and resources that they need so that they can go out and do all this marketing. And so that's kind of how it evolved. And the thing that a lot of entrepreneurs think, they have this passion for, I make jewelry, or for me, I like working with real estate agents, or I like marketing, or whatever it is. And they go into that thinking, this is what my business is going to look like. Yeah. Well, guess what? It doesn't ever look like that. We never start at college and end up in the same place either, do we? Right. Very few people. We all start out thinking one thing. We have to be able to pivot. We've all been through this pandemic, so we're all pivoting again, and I'm pivoting again. That's kind of why I started the podcast, is that sales funnels change. So for me, my whole life has just been change, move forward. But the one thing that's been constant is where I want to end up. I want to be an amazing mom. I want to have great kids. Mm-hmm. And I want to change the world one woman at a time. Mm. And so through all of that, as long as you keep that one thing in mind, every decision you make becomes an easy one.
That's a beautiful story, Sheila.
Thank you.
Gosh, I can just feel the love you have for your family. I'm kind of starting to tear it myself. That's just beautiful. So your focus is helping women entrepreneurs, because obviously you're a woman and you've gone through the struggle of being a single mother and raising 5 children and all that comes with that. What is the first piece of advice you give to the woman who is struggling and wants to start a business, but she's just scared for various reasons, but mostly because she doesn't know, like, how do I just stop what I'm doing and start something completely new?
Yeah, it's a hard thing to do. I actually recently got remarried, which in October, and it changed my life again. Thank you. It's wonderful. I don't know if you've seen the video. This is my family. So he has 5 children. I have 5 children. And then he has 2 that are married. I have 2 that are married. So we have 14, kids in that picture.
Gosh. And it's the Brady Bunch.
It is, and it's amazing. And I always said I wanted 1 million grandkids. So if you have my 5 children are like, Mom, we're not giving you 1 million grandkids. So when I got remarried, things changed again, and I'm actually dealing with this right now in that I'm being given the opportunity where I don't have to work anymore. Mm-hmm. And, he's really encouraging me, finish your book. I'm writing a book. You finish your book. Change your digital marketing agency so you don't have to work so much. Do what you want to do finally. You don't have to worry about the roof over our heads. I will do that. And that's a very unusual place for me to be, because I've never felt that before.
Right.
And so I'm kind of reverse of what you asked. But the fact is that the thing that I have to keep in mind now in this situation, as well as in my previous situation, was, where do I want to be? And so if you know where you want to be, then the next thing you have to look at is, what are your priorities in life? Yeah. If you know what you know your dream, okay? You get up in the morning, this happens through the day, you've got vacations, you've got whatever, right? Then you look at your priorities. For me, my priorities are my family, my book, so let's start back. My health, my spirituality are first me. I have to take care of me.
Yeah.
Then it's my family. And then it's my book. Yeah. And then it's helping the women who are waiting for me to help them. So those are kind of my priorities.
Are those the same things as your values, Sheila? Because that's what it sounds like you're talking about. What your values are.
Yeah, it's kind of like your values. It is. Your values to me are more on an emotional level, meaning my value is I want to have integrity. I want to be, honest, those kind of things. For me, the priorities are, this is non-negotiable. Which your values are also non-negotiable. So yeah, you can combine those together or keep them separate, either way. But yeah, you take that core of yourself, of who you want to be, of what you want to keep as your priority. If money was never an object, what kind of things are the most important, number one? And then every decision that you make after that, let's say, there's a woman out there and she's like, you know what? I'm a stay-at-home mom. I've got 2 kids. Well, I'm not a stay-at-home mom. I'm a single mom. I have 2 kids. I'm going to work. I hate going to work. I hate leaving my babies. What do? You write out these values or your priorities in life first. Then you start writing these courses of actions, or you start making this roadmap. What are your options? What resources do you have? How can you get started? What do you have to have in order to achieve that goal of being able to stay home with your babies? And then you just do like a huge brain dump, take like a whole week and like explore every single thing. And then go back to all of those courses of actions that you created and compare them with your priorities. If you're saying to yourself, I'm going to go be a traveling salesperson because truck driver or something, you can compare those to your priorities and values and immediately know that's not going to work for you, right? So just check it off.
Yeah.
So, but you compare every single thing that you plan it, create it, love it, and then compare it to your priorities and your values, and you'll quickly know if it's possible or not.
Yeah. I've spoken with a few coaches and psychologists who say something very similar, and they call it values. And it was great advice because at the time, like, I didn't even know what my values were. And I was kind of embarrassed. I said, I don't know what my top values are. But once I figured out what my top values are, now every time I have a choice to make or decision to make, I see if that choice is going to align with my values. And if it doesn't align with my values, then I know that's just not the right choice for me.
Yeah. And the more you do it, the faster it happens in your brain.
Yeah.
So I personally have an extremely difficult time with boundaries. I'm a very empathic person, and so people can invade on me very easily. Yeah. And I was actually talking to the co-host of my podcast this morning, and I was like, oh, Nate, I'm really struggling with this because I feel this energy coming in. And he goes, okay. And he puts his hands on the table. He goes, look at me. He says, I'm going to send you all the positive energy I can send you because you have the worst boundaries in the world. So I know you'll receive that energy. So it was really funny. And it helped. It did, because we're good friends. And so by being able to recognize that boundaries is something that I struggle with, everything that I get asked to do, every single yes or no question, I have to ask myself, does that align with where I want to be and what I want to do? Because I find myself, and entrepreneurs, we're crazy. We can't just do one thing. We got to do 500 things, which is why I have 3 things going on, even though it's really kind of one thing, right? So I go speak for Yes Women's Network. I do the podcast to drive traffic to Yes Women's Network, and I do the work through Lock and Load Marketing. So there is a kind of a purpose. They do work together, but at the same time, it's very difficult to keep so many balls in the air. So I have to ask myself, and also I'm such a giving person. Yeah. People, they're like, somebody posted the other day, I'm looking for guests for my podcast, whatever. And I immediately thought of like 5 people he could use. And I went and I'm like, okay, I'm going to send them this big long email. I'm going to find their bios. I'm going to blah, blah. And I'm like, you know what? Stop. Does that align with your values that you need to do today? What are you doing today? Can it wait? Put it on your to-do list. He's going to be recording next month, Mm-hmm. So I always have to do that, kind of catch myself and pull myself back.
Yeah. And, Sheila, I think it's very similar for a lot of women as far as the boundaries, because I know for myself, I used to be a big people pleaser. And so I just wanted to make people happy and I want people to like me. And so boundaries were not really existent. And I'm talking about like when I was in my 20s, like I've matured since then. But I think it's a big issue for women. And so when you're going into entrepreneurship, it's a little bit challenging to really get the ball rolling when your ultimate goal really is to get people to like you.
It is. And you have to really watch yourself. Have you heard of that song, There's a Hole in My Bucket, Dear Eliza?
No.
Right. So you haven't heard that song. Okay. I must be really old.
Is that a country song, Sheila? It sounds like that's the title of a country song.
It's a children's song, actually. Yeah. So this is kind of when I think of women who feel like they need to change themselves, I think of this song. And so I'm gonna read you. It's kind of a poem, but it's also a song. It's really funny. So there's a hole in my bucket, dear Liza. So I'm just gonna read it to you. Okay. Yeah. So there's a hole in my bucket, dear Liza, dear Liza. There's a hole in my bucket, dear Liza. There's a hole. Well, fix it, dear Henry, dear Henry, dear Henry. Fix it, dear Henry, fix it. With what shall I fix it, dear Liza, dear Liza? With what shall I fix it, dear Liza? With what? Okay, now I'm going to stop all the repetitive stuff and just get to the guts of it because it's a little bit longer if you do that. And she says, well, fix it with straw. And he's like, well, the straw is too long. She says, well, cut it. And he says, how do I cut it? And she says, with an axe. And he goes, but the axe is dull. Sharpen it, Henry, sharpen it. And he says, how shall I sharpen it? And she says, with a stone. I mean, you can imagine her just driving her crazy right now.
Yeah.
And he, with a stone, and he goes, with what shall I wet it, dear Liza, because he's got to get the stone wet. And she says, with a bucket. Right? So do you see that circle? So this is what women do to themselves. The funny thing is, if you look at it from this perspective, where the woman's telling the man, or a child, you're telling your children the same things, go figure it out. But you're going to end up in this loop if you do that to yourself. So what you have to do is look way past all of it and go, this is where I want to be. What resources do I have to get there? And what I kind of compare the holes in the bucket to is depression, anxiety, stress, financial woes, whatever those problems are. If we're not patching our own buckets with our own, self recovery and health and whatever else we need, we can't help anybody else. Nothing can be done if there's holes in our bucket.
Right.
And we can't fix our bucket or fix somebody else's bucket unless our bucket is fixed. There's just so many things that story just kind of triggers in me, that don't drive yourself into the ground by running yourself in circles, and make sure you're taking care of yourself. Do you know there's a study done? The average woman spends 17 minutes a day on herself. That includes showering, makeup, eating, all of the things that you do for yourself, the average woman. And then of those, so there was a study done in the UK, and then they went back to all of those women, and they gave them the results of that report, of that study. And 98% of them came back and said, I don't even spend 17 minutes.
Right. Yeah.
So take a minute, put your mascara on if it makes you feel good in the morning, whatever it takes, do those little things to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. And you can do it. Like, if I can do it, oh my gosh, everybody can do it.
Right. Because you have a lot of stuff to do already. And so you can take some time for yourself. So how do we get into, I guess I have two questions there. How important then is mindset when it comes to preparing to start a business, and how do you get yourself into that mindset? Because a lot of people can't even see the hole in their bucket because they're not in the right mindset to recognize that their bucket is leaking.
I'm always joking, when I realized there was a hole in my bucket, all I had left was the rim.
Right.
I've got this handle and a rim, and there's no bucket underneath.
Right.
Because what happened was, I had gotten to the point where I was physically ill. And because I was so sad, I was so unhappy. I was in an abusive marriage, and it was just, I was in a really bad place. And so that's actually when I first started hearing about mindset. And mindset is so hard, because in order to have a good mindset, you need to have a good mindset, right? There's another hole in your bucket, because learning mindset is hard, and it takes a lot of work. And I learned how to meditate. I learned how to stop and look at myself. I totally never believed in gratitude journals until that time as well. So I think in order to find out or figure out how do you get in that mindset, you need to know who you are. And a lot of problem with women, like you and I, we're people pleasers, right, Ebony? So what happens is somebody says, oh, Ebony, those earrings, I just don't know. Next time you put earrings on, what's the thing you think of?
That one comment.
Fabulous. Yeah, you don't think I felt fabulous in those earrings yesterday. And then Sheila said, Ebony, by the way, I love your earrings, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Your earrings, I love them. And so that dents us, that marks us, that stops us, and so you have, if you know who you are, if you're a strong person, you'll be like, whatever, I love these earrings, right? Yeah. So you have to love yourself and know who you are. There was a time when my husband left me. So like I said, I've been married a couple of times. My second husband left me. And that weekend, there was a weekend recently after that my children had gone with their dads. And so I was home alone, and I was devastated because I didn't see him. There's no warning that he was leaving. None. Everything is great, I thought. Moved in with another girl. And so they left. And I was just so sick and tired of crying, so sick and tired of being sad. And, and women understand this, when you're sad like that, it hurts physically. It's not just an emotional pain, your whole body aches. You might as well have the COVID, right?
Yeah.
And so I went to bed that night and I thought, I'm just so tired. I just want to sleep. So I went and took a couple sleeping pills. And then I thought, well, I just want the physical pain to go away too. That'll help me sleep better. So I went and took some, narcotics. Not smart. I don't recommend it.
Right. Yeah.
The next morning, I woke up to my children running up the stairs, yelling, "Mom, Mom, we're home!" And I was so excited to hear them. And I went to get out of bed, and I realized I had been sick by the bed, and those pills were there. And if I had not done that, my kids would have come up to a very different situation.
Mm-hmm.
And so that day, as I'm sitting there, my children were very touchy-feely. So all 5 of them are sitting around me, touching me in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm realizing, how am I going to take care of these kids by myself? I don't have a job and I have nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, okay, well, you're the only one who can do it. And they are your priority and you love them so much. And I looked inside myself to find something to do, some way to drive myself. And I saw that rim of that bucket and nothing else, because he had taken everything from me. He had changed me to the point where I didn't even know who I was.
Right.
And so for me to change my mindset took, I had to take myself out of the equation, and I started it for my kids. I got up every morning for them. Eventually I could get up for myself. Eventually I started changing. And so I just had to literally, there's no easy way to do it.
Right.
You just have to force yourself to do it.
Right.
But if you know what you want and you remember that every single time that something comes up or you get discouraged, because building a business is hard. I'm in my 10th year. 80% of businesses fail in the first year. The next 80% fail in the next 3 years or 5 years after that. Most of them don't make it to 10 years. So I feel truly blessed that I made it to 10 years, but it was not easy. And I'm not going to tell you I did it in 38.7 seconds like other people. It took me, years.
Right.
So you just have to decide, and then you have to force yourself to do it and understand that it's okay. And that whatever you're doing, if you're doing it with your purpose and you know why you're doing it, that makes it easier.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, thanks for sharing that story, Sheila, because that's a powerful story. And a lot of people have been, including myself, like rock bottom. And you're like, like you don't even feel like getting out of bed. And how am I going to, how am I going to get myself out of this? Or how can I make myself feel better? And for you, it's your kids, just the thought of your kids, as you said, going up to that bedroom to a completely different situation potentially. So it's, sometimes it's just picking out that one or several loved ones who love you and need you, and you love and you need, and that can really help you that can propel you to the next step. But that's pretty powerful. Yeah. So how then, so let's say that, I'm a woman entrepreneur. Let's say I've hit rock bottom. I found my reason, my parents, my kids, whatever it is. How do I decide what business I want to do? What if I have like all these ideas?
Yeah, and we do. And if you're a true entrepreneur, you absolutely actually will have a whole ton of ideas, and you won't know what to do with them. So really the biggest thing that you can do is ask yourself, like, if you had to, if there was something that you would do no matter what, you didn't need money, you didn't have any resources, it makes you happy, you dream about it, you think about it, you sleep about it. I would say that's where you want to start, is somewhere where you are like, you know what, no matter what, I love marketing. So I love marketing, and it keeps food on the table, but also I just love it. Like, people tell me all the time, they're like, calm down. I'm like, oh, sorry, you got me excited about marketing, right? So that thing that gets you like all giddy inside. So if you're sitting at home right now and you are, haven't started, or you have started, because that day that I told, Fannie Mae, no, I went into this deep depression, and I'm like, now what am I going to do? I was just given this huge opportunity and I said no to it. What the heck? How am I going to get going? And I changed every, I'd like, oh, well, I'm going to do this. And I tried it. I didn't like it. So I'm going to do this. I tried it and I didn't like it. Don't feel like you start something and you have to keep going. If you don't like it, change it. So look at what actions you need to take to achieve the excitement that gets you out of bed every morning, the things that make you super happy. What are you passionate about? What dreams do you want to achieve? What do you think about? One of the courses I actually have a blog on my website about it. It's called Turning Your Hobbies into Cash. So I have some friends, they sell cinnamon rolls. He loves making
cinnamon roll this morning. It was delicious.
See? Yeah. And I don't like making cinnamon rolls. Well, she sells them every week. She sold like 75 like one day.
Oh my God.
But she gets to make her cinnamon rolls and she makes a little cash, right? So you can start off with something that little. Don't feel like you have to make $1 million business in the first year. Just find what's motivating you, what's getting you out of bed, what's exciting you, and look and see if there's a way that you can make money doing that. Because you want to be happy. I mean, we don't want to wake up every morning hating our business, because you know what? Your clients will hate you if you do that.
Right.
You'll lose yourself. You'll change. And so, find out what makes you happy.
Yeah. And I think you also mentioned a key point is that it's not going to happen overnight. And I think a lot of people, especially people who are in dire situations at work where they hate their job and they're looking for something, like they want something quick.
Yes.
Like I want to start my own business and I want to make $1 million by the end of the week.
Right.
And it doesn't happen that way. It is a very, it can be a slow, tedious process. But the key is to not give up and to find something that you really, as you said, enjoy doing, that you can actually stick with.
Yeah.
In the long run.
One of my favorite quotes is this super, top level high performers in the world, they make quick decisions with slow change. So if you have your priorities or your values in place, you can make those quick, smart decisions and then realize that it may not happen tomorrow. Right. Yeah. But don't ever, one of the other things I really like to talk about is there's the why, the what, and the how of business, right? We know what our why is. That's actually probably the easiest thing, is figure out, why am I doing what I'm doing? Well, because I was that single mom sitting on the couch, I want to help them, right? And because I grew up a military brat, I understand that they're still single moms, even though they're married. Yeah. And so there's the what. What do you need to do? When you start thinking about what do you need to do, don't let the how of you're going to do it stop you from the what are you going to do? Meaning, you decided to start a podcast. If you had said to yourself, the how is, how do I get it hosted? How do I edit it? Who do I get on my podcast? How do I record it? How do I hear? If you get wrapped up in the how, you'll never do the what, and you'll never achieve the why. So you don't let that suck you in. Also, another saying is, if it tires you out, hire it out. So like, I hate bookkeeping. I spent 12 hours doing this bookkeeping task. And one of my best friends is a bookkeeper. I kept calling her for, how do I do this? She's like, I'll do it for you. I'm like, no, I got it. So I could have paid her for 2 hours or spend 12 hours doing it myself. Now, granted, if I didn't have the money to pay her, you can actually do a trade. I could have done 2 hours of marketing for her and let her do my 2 hours of bookkeeping.
Right.
It's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah.
Right. So, I think trading is going to come back. Currency is questionable these days. Right. So I think it's, the world may come back to a place where you're doing trading.
That's actually I'm glad you mentioned that, because there's, maybe you can talk about this also, but like entrepreneur versus solopreneur.
Yes. Versus CEO. There's a difference.
Okay. Yeah. And it seems like if you're a solopreneur, you're doing obviously everything solo, and it can become very overwhelming, and you're going to need to outsource some stuff. And perhaps when you're first starting, you don't have the money to do that. But I like this bartering. It's really bartering system that you're talking about, where you do something for me, I do something for you. That's actually a really great idea. Can you talk a little bit about like entrepreneurship versus solopreneur and what like the main difference is? Because if you're a solopreneur, is that even like a viable business? Like,
Yeah, you'd be surprised how many people can do it on their own. I think if there's really not a terribly huge difference between solopreneur and entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I think most solopreneurs just say that because they don't have a team, they don't have people
Mm,
working with them. I'm a solopreneur in that I don't have any employees on my books,
right.
but I'm an entrepreneur as well because I hire things out. And I think solopreneurs do hire things out as well. I outsource everything.
Uh-huh.
And there's a couple different ways you can actually do that. I'd like to just share that with you too, because what I do is there's a lot of people who want to start a virtual assistant business. I need virtual assistants. I love training them. I can't make money doing it. I need people to work for me. I can't afford to pay them. So I hire them as interns. And I train them and teach them, and they do my work for me.
Right.
Now, it's exhausting. It takes a lot of effort, but it's win-win because I get some help. Back in the day when I first started my podcast, I taught someone how to be a virtual assistant, how to get clients, how to be a podcast manager, and she edited my videos.
Okay.
It's a win-win,
Yeah.
right? So that's one of the things I really like to do. But I don't think there's a huge difference. I think it is a mindset between solopreneur and entrepreneur. If you're saying you're a solopreneur, you are not asking for help. You're not getting help. You're bootstrapping everything, and you're not going to be able to grow. You just can't grow from that. If you're an entrepreneur, you are outsourcing. You're still doing it a lot on your own. You may have a couple team members, but what you really want to achieve is those are the steps, right? You start as a solopreneur because you don't have a choice, and do things as simple and as cheap. I told my husband when I met him, I said, darling, you should know I'm cheap and easy. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, well, if there's a cheaper way to do it, I'll find it. And if there's an easier way to do it, I'll find it. He goes, don't tell anybody that you're cheap and easy. But you have to kind of think on that mindset. And that's kind of where you are. And then once you move up into the entrepreneur, you're feeling like you can outsource more, you can branch out more, you can do more than one social media platform, start out really simple, build up to it. But with making that flip from entrepreneur to CEO, I think I have 3 or 4 podcast episodes just on that mindset. Realize that Tesla, the new car that just came out, 2 years ago, is still a startup. So how do you go from entrepreneur to big girl panties business is what I like to call it, right? How do you make that shift? Because that is a big one, and that is 100% mindset. It doesn't have anything to do with anything other than you decide one day you want to be a CEO. So what I suggest, solopreneurs start out thinking like a CEO. That was one of my biggest mistakes. Is I thought I'm a marketer. I'm not a bookkeeper. I don't need to understand bookkeeping. I just need to do it so I can get it done. No, you are CEO of a company. If you want it to grow and build, you start out with that mindset, you grow into it, and then you're going to be able to make that flip a lot quicker.
Yeah. I like that. Start acting like you are what you want to be.
Yes.
That's always great advice.
Yeah, don't fake it till you make it now. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But make sure that you have that mindset of, you know what, this is a decision for my business. Am I going to make it like I'm a solopreneur, entrepreneur, or a CEO?
Right. And
CEO is
so,
like confidence,
yes, yeah. And when you, I was reading, I don't know if it was a book I was reading or I can't remember, but this book or whatever it was saying that when you're starting your business, you always want to think about, what's the end? Like, will I be able to sell this or, sell this business? Is it going to be something that I can pass on? So if you're like a solopreneur and you want to just keep being a solopreneur, is that something that you can eventually sell?
Well, it really comes down to what you're selling. So I've recently checked into selling a business, and the business broker that I spoke with actually came back and said, you're 80% of the value of this business. So if you don't go with it, the business loses value. Actually, this was 2 years ago. And so I was like, well, dang it. What have I done? Because everybody who comes wants to work with me. I'm the one who brings in the clients. Yes, I outsource things, but really the only thing that is not me is the admin. It's the back end. I was hiring that out. And so what you really need to look at is have that exit strategy, is I think the word you were looking for, because you need to understand, like, you're going to want to retire someday. You want your kids to grow up and move out someday. You love them, have the grandkids come back, but know what you want to do down the future. Because when I changed my business from Sheila J. Davis, which was my former name, to Yes Women's Network, the purpose of that was so that I could someday sell it and retire and take a break. Being an entrepreneur, I work 80 hours a week, so I don't have to work 40 hours a week for the man.
Right.
So someday I want to go live in Ireland for 2 years. Yeah. Well, you have to have that exit strategy, and that includes how you structure your business. It does come back to how you name it. Obviously, I couldn't sell it with my name. And now that I'm remarried and I have a different name, you know what I mean? Yeah. So you have to look at that, like you said, the end goal. Where do you want to be at the end when you retire? Or if you love it, you may want to just do it for the rest of your life. Like I do want to be a speaker for the rest of my life. So I will have, some kind of business, because I do love speaking. And that's not something I want to retire from. I may cut back. So I have that kind of in place. But understanding how you want to get out at the end helps you build it from the beginning, for sure.
Yeah. I think that's something a lot of people don't really think about when they are starting the business. They're just thinking about all the potential money they could make.
Yeah, and that's okay.
Start it. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. But I think when you start actually thinking, like, what do I want? Like, what's the end? Like, when I'm ready to retire, when I'm ready to stop, what will that look like? And what can I pass this on to? What's the legacy of it? Maybe is the question. Like, what's the legacy of my business?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for Yes Women's Network, I knew the legacy the minute my mentor and I decided to call it Yes Women's Network. I actually had this image pop in my head, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's the dream. And it was just that quick, the quick of a snap. And I saw the dream. And so I immediately knew what I wanted it to be, because I saw the ending. And so, I don't question every single decision against my ending, but I do think of it often. Like, I want that ending that I saw in my mind at that moment. And so you do have to keep that in mind. Don't let it stop you from moving forward, but let it help you adjust,
Yeah. And you mentioned pivoting before, and I think that's another important point. I have with other marketers I've spoken with. I was actually speaking with one. His name is Bill Flynn. And he was saying that every business is going to have to do a little pivoting at some point, because he worked with a lot of startups, and he said very rarely was the first idea like the end idea. Like, we always had to kind of change. And I think that scares a lot of people, because it's a little overwhelming to think of changing course sometimes.
Yeah, it does. And, last April, when I lost 8 speaking engagements, which is about 80% of my income is my speaking engagements, I had to pivot too. We all had to do that. I think we're all got a big fat lesson in pivoting in 2020. And so what we need to realize is that pivoting does not necessarily mean giving up on your dream or not reaching that end goal that you're looking for or shutting your doors. All pivoting means is making a little bit of a shift. Right. Pivoting isn't turning from complete right to complete left. Yeah. It's, turning your head a little bit, and then you might be able to spin around, but you start just with a little bit. And so one of the ways I recommend that people kind of look at their business is you can't see what you're in I'm going to speak here in a minute. So I'm having a senior moment. Okay. You can't see the trees when you're in the weeds, right? Is that the saying? I was trying to think of the saying.
I've never heard that, but it sounds good.
Yeah. Like you've heard it like before, like you're in the weeds. So when you're in the middle of a forest, you can't see the whole forest. All you can see is the trees around you. And so one of the things I always recommend to my entrepreneurs and my clients is step out of the forest, step way, way, way above the forest, so you can see the whole forest. And that's hard to do. You may have to find a coach to help you with that. Yeah. But, getting that 30,000 foot view of your business will help you understand that's the tree I need to go around, and I can get there taking this course. Yeah. And so by stepping way outside of your business, it's like you don't know what you don't know, but then when you know it, you don't know how to unknow it. Okay. So I don't know if that makes sense, but basically if you don't know something, you can find out about it, and it's all fresh and new, and it's all, exciting, and all these new creative things come out of it. But once you know it, changing it is difficult, which is one of the reasons why I don't work with real estate agents anymore. They're like in this rut, mail out the postcards, make the cold calls. No, guys, that's not how you do it anymore. You know what I mean? There's a whole new way. And if you look outside of your industry, that's a great way to see how you can pivot. Look outside of your industry and see what other people are doing. Even like, look at what McDonald's is doing to get people coming in, and see what you can do that McDonald's is doing, and just tweak it for you. You can come up with fresh ideas just by looking outside of that.
That's actually really good advice, to look at other industries, to even talk with people like in other industries. Like, I'm a teacher, but I don't just talk to teachers. I mean, I've gotten a lot of ideas from talking to people like you, just in completely different, different career paths. And I can take that advice and knowledge and insight and apply it to teaching. So it's great advice.
Yeah, thanks. I think that looking outside of where you are can show you all kinds of different things that you weren't even aware were there. It's so cool.
Yeah. It's part of just being open to possibilities and thinking outside the box, really. Yeah. Sheila, we are closing in on our time, but I want to give you the opportunity to share just any last words of wisdom or advice you have for women who are on the precipice of starting something and they're just not quite ready to take that first step.
Well, have you ever seen a mustard seed?
Very, very tiny.
Yeah, they're teeny tiny. So if you took a pencil and you made a little dot on a table, that's twice the size of a mustard seed, right? Have you ever seen a mustard tree? No. They're 25 feet tall and 25 feet wide. They're gigantic, right? So if you have that tiny little mustard seed, just remember that tree doesn't grow overnight. Yeah. And all you have to do is nurture that. So if you spend a year thinking about it, when you start, you're going to start, a year in with all of those thoughts. You're going to have ideas. And so just start with that tiny little piece of mustard seed and realize that if you fertilize that, and if you nurture it, and if you feed it, and you do all those things to it, and you shine some sunshine on it, love on it, then it's going to grow into this big tree, and you can do what you want to do. But remembering that the tree is what you want to achieve is the importance, I'm all about the allegories apparently today.
Yeah, I love that. That's a beautiful analogy, the mustard seed. Yeah. Sheila, tell us where we can find you.
Best way to find me is to go to yeswomensnetwork.com, and you can get a hold of me there for my contact page or however.
Thank you so much. I'm going to stop recording, but I'm going to chat with you for just a bit. Yeah. But it was great having you, Sheila.
Thank you.
Sheila Logan's story is so powerful, and I love hearing her tell that story because it's a demonstration of how we can get so clear on what we need to do when we are in our deepest despair. So I hope that if you are in a business, if you're employed and you're looking to expand your role in that business or move up in that business, or if you have your own business and you're looking to grow that business or even start a business, that you reach out to Sheila, check out her website, Yes Women's Network, and her Facebook community, because I'm sure you can add a lot of value, and I'm sure you will get a lot of value out of that Facebook community. I'm actually a member of that community. It's quite wonderful. So please check out Sheila and her websites. Also, I was going to say something I totally forgot. Oh, in the meantime, check out Zazo.com. Subscribe to my weekly newsletter. Make sure you check your spam email in case you don't get the verification or the confirmation email. You can follow me on Twitter at Ebony Haywood. You can follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Motivation to Write, and tune in next week when I talk to another fabulous guest. As a matter of fact, I should start telling you who my guest is like I used to. So my guest next week is Tommy Makanjula. She is a chef. She's a Nigerian chef based in the UK, and she started off with a blog and then wrote a book and then kind of just blew up from there. So tune in next week for that conversation. And thank you so much for your time. And I will see you next week. Bye-bye.